Amstetten, Austria, is a quiet town. It is a place where people know each other. Everyone thought they knew Josef Fritzl. He was a respected engineer. But a dark secret lay beneath his house. Elisabeth Fritzl was his daughter. She went missing when she was 18. For 24 years, no one saw or heard from her. People thought she had run away. The truth was much more horrifying. Elisabeth was held captive right under their noses. Her story is one of unimaginable horror, but it is also one of survival and resilience. This essay tells her tale. It explores her life before captivity, the years she spent in the basement, her escape and her recovery. Elisabeth Fritzl was born in 1966. She had a seemingly normal childhood. She was one of 7 children. Her family lived in a large house in Amstetten, but behind closed doors, things were different. Josef Fritzl, her father, was a strict and controlling man. On August 28, 1984, Elisabeth disappeared. She had been lured into the basement by her father. He asked her to help him with a door. Once inside, he overpowered her. He locked her in a secret soundproof room. The nightmare began. Elisabeth's world shrank to a few small rooms. She was alone, scared and helpless. Her father told the family and police she had run away. They believed him. No one suspected the truth. For 24 years, Elisabeth lived in darkness and fear. Elisabeth's mother, Rosemary, and her siblings grieved. They put up missing person posters, but they never found her. Meanwhile, Elisabeth was just a few feet away, trapped in her father's dungeon. The basement was damp, dark and cold. The walls seemed to close in, trapping every bit of warmth and hope. The air was thick with moisture, making it hard to breathe. Elisabeth had no view of the outside world. The air was stale, filled with the scent of mildew and despair. There were no windows to let in light or fresh air, making the space feel even more suffocating. She had to endure this inhumane condition day after day with no end in sight. The isolation was unbearable and the silence was deafening. Josef brought her basic supplies, just enough to keep her and the children alive. Each visit was a reminder of her captivity, but it was never enough. The food was always scarce and the hunger was a constant companion. The children often went to bed with empty stomachs. Over the years, Elisabeth had 7 children. Each birth was a mix of joy and sorrow, knowing they would grow up in this dark, confined space. 3 of them lived with her in the basement, sharing the same cramped quarters and enduring the same hardships. The other 3 were raised upstairs by Josef and Rosemary, unaware of their mother's suffering below. Josef told Rosemary that Elisabeth had left the children on their doorstep, spinning a web of lies to cover his monstrous actions. The living conditions for Elisabeth and her children were awful. The basement was cluttered and dirty, with minimal furniture and no comforts. They had little food and no medical care. Illnesses went untreated and injuries were left to heal on their own. The children in the basement never saw the sun. Their skin was pale and they were often sickly from the lack of sunlight and fresh air. They had no idea what the outside world looked like. Their entire existence was confined to the dark, damp basement. They were pale and weak, their bodies and minds suffering from the lack of proper nutrition and stimulation. They lived in constant fear of Josef. He visited them regularly, his presence a source of terror. His visits were always brutal and violent. The children would cower in fear, and Elisabeth would brace herself for the worst. Elisabeth tried to make life as normal as possible for her children. She taught them to read and write, using whatever materials she could find. She told them stories, trying to spark their imaginations and give them a sense of hope. But the mental and physical toll was immense. The constant stress and fear took a heavy toll on her health and well-being. They lived in constant dread, never knowing when Josef would come or what he would do. Every day was a struggle for survival. The harsh conditions and constant fear made life a never-ending nightmare. Section 4. The Breakthrough. In April 2008, one of Elisabeth's children, Kirsten, fell seriously ill. The situation was dire, and Elisabeth knew that without immediate medical attention, her daughter's life was at risk. Elisabeth begged Joseph to take her to the hospital. At first he refused, citing the risk of exposure. But Kirsten's condition worsened rapidly, and it became clear that something had to be done. Finally, Joseph relented, realizing that he had no other choice. He took her to the hospital and claimed she was his granddaughter. The doctors were immediately suspicious due to the child's poor health and unusual circumstances. They asked questions, probing for more information. Joseph's story did not add up. The inconsistencies in his account raised red flags. The police got involved, sensing that there was more to the story. They launched an investigation, determined to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Elisabeth convinced Joseph to let her visit Kirsten in the hospital. She knew this was her chance to seek help. She promised not to reveal the truth, a promise she had to make to gain his trust. He agreed, albeit reluctantly. She promised not to reveal the truth. He agreed, believing that he still had control over the situation. At the hospital, Elisabeth and her other children were freed. The moment was surreal. After years of captivity, they were finally out in the open. She told the police everything, the details of their imprisonment, the years of abuse and the horrors they endured. The police were shocked, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the situation. They could not believe what they were hearing. The story was almost too horrific to be true, but Elisabeth's sincerity and the evidence she provided left no room for doubt. They had to see the basement for themselves. The police, along with a rescue team, prepared to uncover the hidden truth. The rescue team found the dungeon. It was a dark, cramped space, hidden from the world for so many years. It was worse than they had imagined. The conditions were horrific, a testament to the years of suffering Elisabeth and her children had endured. The world learned about Elisabeth's ordeal. The media swarmed Amstetten, eager to cover the shocking story. Josef Fritzl was arrested, finally facing justice for his unimaginable crimes. The truth was finally out. The headlines screamed of the horrors that had been hidden for so long, and the world watched in disbelief. Elisabeth and her children were free at last. They could finally begin the long process of healing and rebuilding their lives, away from the shadow of their captor. Section 5. Public Revelation. The news of Elisabeth's captivity spread like wildfire. People were horrified. How could this happen in a quiet town? Josef Fritzl was arrested and charged with numerous crimes. The trial began in 2009. He faced charges of rape, incest, and murder. At the trial, Elisabeth testified against her father. She was brave. She told the court about the years of abuse. Joseph showed no remorse. He admitted to his crimes, but tried to justify them. The jury was disgusted. Josef Fritzl was found guilty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. The judge called his crimes monstrous. The world breathed a sigh of relief. Justice was served. But for Elisabeth and her children, the journey to healing was just beginning. The media continued to cover the story. People were fascinated and horrified. There were documentaries and news specials. Everyone wanted to know more. But Elisabeth and her family wanted privacy. They needed time to heal. Section 6. Aftermath and Recovery. After their rescue, Elisabeth and her children were placed in a witness protection program. This program was designed to ensure their safety and give them a fresh start, far away from the traumatic events they had endured. They were given new identities, complete with new names and backgrounds. This was a crucial step in helping them to leave their past behind and start anew. They moved to a secret location, a place where they could feel safe and begin the process of healing. The new home was a symbol of hope and a new beginning. The authorities provided them with therapy and support. Professional counselors and support groups were made available to help them navigate their complex emotions and trauma. It was a long road to recovery, filled with ups and downs. The journey was not easy, but it was necessary for their healing. Elisabeth focused on rebuilding her life. She took small steps each day, finding strength in her children and the support around her. She tried to give her children a sense of normalcy. Routine activities like doing homework and having family dinners became important rituals. They went to school and made friends. For the children, this was a chance to experience a childhood they had been deprived of. They experienced the outside world for the first time in a long while. Simple outings to the park became moments of joy and discovery. It was overwhelming but also wonderful. The freedom to explore and play was something they had longed for. Elisabeth and her children showed incredible resilience. Their bond grew stronger as they faced their new life together. They had survived unimaginable horrors. The memories of their past were still there, but they were learning to cope. Now they were learning to live again. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for happiness. They leaned on each other for support. The love and trust within the family became their foundation. Slowly but surely, they began to heal. The process was gradual, but with each passing day, they felt a little more whole. Their strength and courage were inspiring. Elisabeth's determination to provide a better life for her children was unwavering. The public respected their privacy. Despite the curiosity, people understood the need for discretion. People were curious but also compassionate. The community around them offered support without prying into their past. They understood that Elisabeth and her children needed space. This respect allowed the family to focus on their recovery. The family continued to receive therapy. Regular sessions helped them to process their experiences and emotions. They worked through their trauma together. Open communication and professional guidance were key to their progress. They were determined to build a better future. With each step forward, they moved closer to a life filled with hope and possibility. Section 7. Conclusion. Elisabeth Fritzl's story is a reminder of the darkness that can exist in the world, but it is also a story of hope and survival. Elisabeth and her children endured years of unimaginable abuse, yet they found the strength to survive and rebuild their lives. It's important to raise awareness about abuse. We must be vigilant and support those who are suffering. Elisabeth's ordeal shows us the importance of compassion and resilience. It reminds us that even in the darkest times there is hope. Elisabeth and her children are a testament to the human spirit. They have shown us that it is possible to overcome even the worst circumstances. Their story is one of survival and courage. It is a story that will not be forgotten. It serves as a beacon of hope for all those who are suffering.